This is CBC Nova Scotia News.
Behind bars, should one of Canada's longest-serving female inmates be granted mercy? Community concerns. This Nova Scotia town has turned on a homeless shelter. The shelter says it's facing a crisis alone. And a doctor turned MLA alleges political interference in an effort to provide emergency department coverage.
Chance for showers and flurries ending, and yes, some sunshine in the mix over the next couple of days. Your full forecast is coming up.
Good evening. A federal inmate with a long history of hostage takings will be sentenced this week for unlawfully confining 2 guards at the Nova Institution Women's Prison in Truro. Serena Tobaccojuice is one of Canada's longest-serving female inmates, but her lawyer is asking a judge to make an extraordinary decision: hand the 43-year-old woman one of the most lenient sentences available in Canada. A warning to viewers that some details in this story may be disturbing, and there are references to suicidal thoughts. Here's the CBC's Richard Cuthbertson.
Serena Tobaccojuice is one of Canada's longest-serving women inmates. And this footage admitted into court evidence is from 3 years ago at the Nova Institution Women's Prison in Truro, Nova Scotia, preventing 2 guards from leaving, grasping a pair of tweezers. This week, a provincial court judge in the case will sentence the 43-year-old after contemplating an extraordinary argument from her defense lawyer: grant a convicted killer with a record of multiple prison hostage takings the most lenient sentence available for an adult in Canada: an absolute discharge. Tobaccojuice, a Cree woman from Saskatchewan, has been repeatedly shuffled from prison to prison during her nearly 3 decades of incarceration. She's been behind bars since she was 15 for murder, but has never applied for parole. The heart of her lawyer's argument in Nova Scotia court: her life has been shaped by horrifying events in childhood, racism in foster care, by the legacy of residential schools where most of her family were sent, and by years spent in segregation or in other forms of isolation in federal prison, some of which she described in an interview in Nova Institution.
The longest 3 straight years in Joliet, I had my own little cage. They got a little cage for me. They even made a whole room out of pretty much metal. I thought I was in purgatory eventually because I was alone. So I thought I killed myself in that cell actually, and I kept asking the staff members, am I real?
Still, an absolute discharge, essentially no sentence at all for confining 2 prison guards? That's something the union that represents correctional officers says would be hard to stomach.
Impact like that coming out of the courts would have a very negative influence on our staff.
Violence is rising in prisons, he says, and guards feel they no longer have the tools to hold inmates accountable.
It's a clear message that there's not much of accountability for inmates' actions.
The Correctional Service of Canada said in a statement that segregation was abolished in 2019, replaced by what are known as structured intervention units with independent oversight. The prosecution in the Serena Tobaccojuice case says she should be sentenced to 3 years. Her life has been tragic, the Crown says, but she's also inflicted much tragedy on others. And that includes multiple hostage takings between 2000 and 2013. Inmates, a guard, a nurse, some injured. Sometimes she's acted alone, sometimes with others, according to previous court decisions.
I was so young and I was afraid and because I was just 18 and I've heard horror stories as growing up, about prisons, and I guess I was trying to be like how the other women were.
Even if Serena Tobaccojuice receives an absolute discharge, she is still serving a life sentence for murder. Her eventual release, if ever, will be up to the parole board. She says she agreed to be interviewed because she says correctional officials should take medical complaints from women more seriously. She says people change and she's not dangerous. She says she was in agonizing pain the day of the incident at Nova Institution and wanted help. After 18 minutes of talking, the 2 guards retreat. Others enter. Moments later, it all ends. Richard Cuthbertson, CBC News, Truro, Nova Scotia.
Nova Scotia RCMP have announced a major drug seizure. They found 40 kilograms of cocaine and 10,000 counterfeit oxycodone pills concealed in the back of a minivan traveling along the Trans-Canada Highway near the Cobequid Pass. The drugs were concealed in a custom-designed hidden compartment in the very rear of the vehicle, which was accessed by a hydraulic mechanism. The seized drugs have an estimated value of $4 million. A homeless shelter in New Glasgow has become the center of controversy. Neighboring homeowners are fed up, and the local police departments say they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars responding to problems they can't fix. But as the CBC's Josh Hoffman tells us, the shelter's operator says they're the only ones trying to address a growing crisis.
Tensions have reached a boiling point in the community of New Glasgow, where residents, business owners, and town officials say the behavior of some individuals using a downtown shelter has become unbearable.
It's just headache after headache. We've had enough. When we can arrange it, we're probably going to try to sell our house.
Wiseman and his wife have lived in the neighborhood for 14 years, but in recent years, he says he's witnessed people doing drugs, having sex, and going to the bathroom on his property. Several residents living next to the shelter told CBC News their belongings have been stolen and there's constant yelling and fighting. Nearby business owners say customers are afraid to come downtown.
A lot of the businesses are down a lot of money. Some of the businesses have actually are locking their doors, and customers have to knock on the doors in order to get into their stores.
As crime and public drug use become more common, the municipality and the shelter are not aligned.
We try to form a relationship with our shelter and their board and their staff, trying to work together on things. But, I just feel that really didn't produce the outcome that we were hoping in the beginning.
In the meantime, it's fallen to emergency services to respond to problems stemming from a growing homeless population. At a recent town hall meeting, officials said these calls will cost an additional $1 million this year, and the current approach is unsustainable.
I think the evidence is clear that there is no amount of police resource that is going to take us out of this complex social crisis.
But for shelter staff, they feel they are being villainized for trying to address this crisis.
As long as a charity can be blamed for societal issues, it takes the responsibility off of government. You can't expect problems to resolve itself when we're the only ones tackling it.
The one thing DeYoung and the mayor do agree on is a need for supportive housing in the community to give vulnerable people a safe home and access to services. The province declined an interview request, and in a statement, a spokesperson wouldn't say if there's a plan to bring supportive housing, which already exists in Halifax, to rural areas of Nova Scotia. Josh Hoffman, CBC News, New Glasgow.
Halifax is changing its approach to homelessness and plans to close its remaining encampments over the next 2 years. On Tuesday, Council voted unanimously for a new framework with key changes. Staff will shift from emergency support to a focus of moving people inside. There will be new rules for people living in encampments to address safety concerns from people in and around those sites. While overall homelessness in Halifax is not slowing down, the number of people sleeping rough has dropped to less than 100 people. Staff say new spaces in shelters and supportive housing has finally allowed Halifax to de-designate sites.
This was always the option of, well, we don't have any other options right now. It was never intended to be something permanent. So I'm okay with that being a goal. I am cautious, though, about what we do to get there, because this has to be centered around the best interests of the people who are most vulnerable.
Halifax staff says the city now has access to real-time data that can help track people through the system. And Ryan Snoddon now with us. First, quick look at the weather forecast, Ryan.
Yeah, Tom, looking at things quietening down over the next couple days. Still a bit breezy, no doubt about it, on Wednesday across the province, but we'll see a little bit more in the way of sunshine on tap, which is going to be nice. Still a chance for a lingering shower or flurry towards Cape Breton, especially through Inverness and Victoria counties. The mainland, though, quieter in terms of the other precipitation, which will taper off. A little bit more sun in the mix. Temperatures 4, 5, 6 degrees. Again, it's the winds that will remain in place for Wednesday, near 20, gusting 30 to 40 kilometers per hour. But the winds will continue to ease through Wednesday evening into the overnight, and that's as this next area of high pressure moves into the area. So that's going to lighten the winds, which will be a nice break because it's been a bit gusty since the weekend. And it's also going to be bringing a little bit more in the way of sunshine. So mostly sunny skies on Thursday, and that will be ahead of our next systems, which will be rolling in through Friday and into Saturday. But the weekend, not a washout. We'll talk about that coming up.
We'll want to hear more. Okay, thanks so much, Ryan.
Thank you.
A Nova Scotia opposition MLA who was also a doctor is concerned delays he faced getting privileges to cover vacant shifts at the Yarmouth Emergency Department were the result of political interference. Government officials, however, say they were just doing due diligence in the face of an unusual situation. Michael Gorman reports.
After Dr. Rod Wilson was elected as an MLA a year ago, he wanted to continue helping medical colleagues when and where he could by picking up shifts at emergency departments in need of help. He'd been doing that in Canso before becoming an MLA, and he wanted to do it in Yarmouth, where he knew staff was also needed. But when he applied for privileges in the Western Zone last January, Wilson faced delays getting a response. When he finally did hear back in March, the Deputy Health Minister told him the House of Assembly Act prevented him from being paid as a doctor and sitting as an MLA. A health department lawyer later told Wilson's lawyer that MLAs could sanction him if he were being paid as a doctor. Wilson says the letter felt like a threat, and he appealed to the Premier for help.
The threatening tone of that letter just motivated me more to fight back. This is ridiculous.
He didn't hear back from the Premier, but access to information documents show Tim Houston's Chief of Staff was aware of the situation. Nicole LaFosse Parker was looped in by the Deputy Health Minister in March and later forwarded information to communications staff for the PC caucus and Premier's office. Statements from both the Premier's office and Health Department noted the unusual nature of the situation. They said any delays were the result of ensuring Wilson would not be in conflict if he were being paid as a doctor and debating or voting on healthcare issues in the legislature. But Wilson already had a letter of support from the province's Conflict of Interest Commissioner even before applying for privileges. In fact, that letter says it would be a disservice to the public were he not to keep offering his services as a doctor. There's also legislation on the books saying that people paid for insured hospital services cannot be barred from sitting as an MLA. Wilson says he's troubled by the situation.
I get asked every month if I could do a locum from Neils Harbor to Yarmouth, yet there appears to have been a political effort to block a physician from actually providing emergency coverage for an emerge that would otherwise be closed. So I think that's appalling.
Wilson says he'll continue to take shifts when he can, but only if it does not coincide with his duties as an MLA. Michael Gorman, CBC News, Halifax.
The National Alert Ready system will be tested on Wednesday in Nova Scotia. The emergency alert will be sent to TV, radio, and cell phones at 1:55 p.m. The National Alert Ready system was designed to alert Canadians to emergencies such as fires, natural disasters, national security threats, and biological threats. Test alerts are sent twice a year. The Milan Cortina Olympics are a few months away, and today we got a glimpse of what our Olympic athletes will be sporting, including one very famous Nova Scotian. Canada's Olympic kits are once again designed by Lululemon. The outfits are rendered in true red, of course, but also deep burgundy and gradient green-gray, inspired by icebergs. Canadian hockey superstar Sidney Crosby was also announced as one of the company Team Canada's ambassadors. Today, he talked about his role and as a member of the Canada's Olympic hockey team.
Obviously, with the partnership with the Olympics and having been a part of the Olympics a couple times, knowing how much passion and pride are involved with the Olympics, and know what a great brand that Lululemon is, it's something that made a lot of sense. To still be playing, to have the opportunity to compete at the Olympics again, is something that I'm grateful for. I'm motivated, and I think it's great for hockey fans. Obviously, it's something that they've wanted to see. So. I'm just grateful for the opportunity to be able to go back.
There's a shot of Halifax tonight, dark as it may be. Ryan back with your full weather forecast right after this.
This weather update is brought to you in part by Atlantic Lottery's iGames. Play hundreds of games on the Atlantic Lottery app or at alc.ca.
Well, we are making our way through November, and I know it's going to be gray, but man, is it ever nice when you see the sun.
Yeah, you know, it's not to say that the sun isn't important all throughout the year.
Kind of need it
You need it in the
really,
summer,
though.
you love it in the spring, but this time of year with the days getting shorter, it really does help to have some sunny days in the mix and kind of get us through this stretch as we push towards the beginning of winter and those shortest days in December. But yes, we are going to see a little bit more of sun in the mix over the next couple days.
Good.
Have a look at our temperatures out there right now. We're ranging between 2 and 4 across Cape Breton and 2 and 6 degrees, the range across the mainland. Our hotspot yet again this evening. I think this might be the third night in a row. Sable Island at 7 degrees. Looking at the winds, yeah, they have been persistent, haven't they? Really since the weekend. Sustained 20 to 30 kilometers per hour. Westport's at 44, and we're gusting 50 to 60 kilometers per hour. Places like Westport, Beaver Island, most of us though gusting 30 to 40. That's going to be the case overnight tonight as well. So there's the satellite and radar, and you can see where we've been looking at those showers and flurries mixing in today, primarily across blowing in through say from Aylesford back into Kentville, Wolfville, and then across into Hants County. Truro, just south of Truro down towards Stewiacke. We've been seeing a lot of these flurries today, likely wet flurries based on the temperature and the radar, and across Cape Breton as well, particularly across Inverness County. That's where we'll continue to see the best chance for flakes even into tomorrow morning will be across Inverness County. There's the low, which is still spinning around in Labrador, and this is really continuing to conduct the traffic, drawing all that cooler air from the north and pushing it in to our region. And yes, couple of lows that we're going to be watching over the next couple of days. That one there over the prairies, that's going to hop a little ride on the jet stream. That will start to push in for Friday, and a secondary system coming in from the south, also pushing in through the later stages of Friday. So let's have a look at the forecast in detail, and starting with temperatures tonight, of course, with overnight lows generally 0, or I should say +2 to -2. That'll be our range for tonight. Maybe a little bit milder coastal areas of the Tri-County. The westerly winds 20 gusting 30 to 40 right through tonight. So remaining a little on the breezy side. There are those flurry chances which will remain in the mix for Inverness County right into Wednesday morning. Pretty quiet across the mainland, but again, that crispy start to the day for tomorrow. And then, yeah, we're looking at a solid mix of sun and cloud tomorrow. Overall, a pretty nice day. Those shower and flurry chances will wrap up in Cape Breton. The potential that we may even see some sunshine across Inverness and Victoria counties into the afternoon, though it does look like the clouds dominate for a good chunk of the day, especially for northern Cape Breton. Becoming a mix of sun and cloud across southern Cape Breton. Winds from the west to southwest, 20 gusting 30 to 40, 5 and 6 degrees for the eastern mainland and into Cape Breton. Looking at 4, 5 and 6 degrees through central areas. The winds here in from the west, 20 gusting 30 to 40 as well. And for the west, temperatures ranging between 4 and 7 degrees. Now, Thursday, as I mentioned earlier, the light winds, which will be so nice after what's been a pretty blustery couple of days across the province, 4, 5, and 6 degrees. And it's all thanks to this area of high pressure. That's going to be moving in. That, as the high is overhead, really lightens the winds, which will be nice. And then that high moves out, and we've got that next system coming in. Couple systems, in fact. This one shooting in from the south. Looks like, thanks to that high, it's going to direct it right in to eastern parts of the mainland and Cape Breton Friday afternoon with some showers. Halifax, also possible, less likely down towards the Tri-County area, but this system approaching from the west will kind of scoop in and bring some more moisture with it, and so we'll all get into some showers from that westerly system coming in. Here is a look at the winds, because they have been a factor over the last couple of days, so I thought I would just show you how things will play out here. So you can see remaining in the mix Wednesday afternoon, gusts 30, 40, even 50 along parts of the coast, and then we are looking at those winds thankfully becoming light into Thursday. And so we'll enjoy that indeed. There are those showers back on tap for Friday. At present, looks like those showers will hold into Saturday morning. Maybe some sunshine into the afternoon on the backside of that system as it kicks out. Sunday, though, is looking like the better day of the two for the weekend. Tom.
Duly noted. Okay, thanks so much, Ryan.
Thank you.
Well, when a provincial government has a big project it wants to make happen, public buy-in matters, especially when the stakes include a $1 billion deficit. The CBC's Taryn Grant and Michael Grant explain how reactions to projects at West Mabou Beach and a Mount Uniacke quarry highlight the importance of social license.
Taryn, on the weekend, we saw 2 protests here in the province, one in Cape Breton, one in Halifax, both focused on concerns about the government's perceived lack of consultation on natural resource development projects.
Shame! Shame! This project does not have the social license to operate in Mabou.
And this past week, we saw the government take 2 very different approaches on such projects. It said thanks but no thanks to the potential of a new golf course within the boundaries of a provincial park, and it is allowing the expansion of a controversial quarry in Mount Uniacke to move to the next step.
The process, a decision, it's based on science and the evidence.
It's interesting to look at these two examples to help us understand what is the calculus that's going on here. How is the government weighing the public buy-in, the necessity to get public buy-in against the necessity to get some new projects going that could bring in some new revenue streams to a province that is facing a huge deficit and needs to figure out some creative ways to make the budget work.
The forecasted deficit at the moment is $1.2 billion. And this comes at a time when all of the money that the PCs have been able to bank on in recent years, generated from population growth, has basically trickled down to a small drip. And so they have to find a way to replace that money, as you say. And so this is where this kind of hard pivot toward natural resources that we've seen since the election has come, with things like offshore wind, offshore gas, onshore fracking has been put back on the table. This is something that the government sees as its best possible option to generate more money, but it's also come with a lot of pushback from the public who have said, hey, where's the consultation on this and why didn't we hear about it during the last election?
These two examples, I think, are interesting to consider if we compare the similarities and the differences. West Mabu Beach was really just a notion. It hadn't gone through any formal regulatory process, versus the Mount Uniacke quarry expansion. It was already an operating quarry that they wanted to increase the size of by about 10-fold. And it was going through environmental assessment. And the developers had made their case much more clearly than the West Mabu Beach golf course proposal was.
Well, and in fairness to that as well, when the Premier talked about West Mabu last week, he spent a lot less time talking about all of this public opposition than he did talking about the fact that officials within the Natural Resource Department simply determined this isn't viable to move ahead to the next step, which would have been community consultation.
But public buy-in isn't just a nice thing to have. It can actually stop a project from going ahead, even if the project is technically sound. But if the public is opposed enough, people could mount a court challenge, and a project could get hung up in court for months, if not years, which is really going to deter any private developer from trying to invest their time and money into something if it's going to get held up because the public doesn't like it.
The reality of almost all these projects we're talking about and that the government is considering is that if they go ahead, they're going to go ahead in rural communities. And this government holds almost every rural seat in the province. And so it is going to have to face the fact that if it wants to move ahead with some of these, it's going to mean angering the very constituents that helped them win those seats in the last election.
We listen carefully to Nova Scotians all the time, the pros, the cons, and we just try to wade through it. But at the end, as a government, we're just trying to make a decision. Does this benefit Nova Scotians?
I think in the next little while, we're going to see exactly what the equation is and where the province is putting its weight. Do the scales tip so that a project is worthwhile because it's going to bring in a lot of money into the government coffers? Or is it tipping towards it not being worthwhile because the public doesn't approve?
Coming up, a conference in Halifax is bringing researchers together to find ways to make the ocean more sustainable. The Ocean Frontier 2025 conference in downtown Halifax is hosting experts and leaders from science and industry and community. They're here to share research and solutions for a safer and more sustainable ocean. That's why Janet Duffy Anderson is here. She's with the Gulf of Maine Research Institute. And let's begin with the Gulf of Maine, a body of water that lots of Nova Scotians are very interested in. Just to begin, how would you describe sort of the state of that ecosystem and how much it's evolving in these recent years?
Yeah, the Gulf of Maine is changing. It's changing really rapidly. It's warming at about 3 times the global ocean average. So it really is a hotbed of change. And we're seeing not only changes in the physics, which is where the water's going, temperature, deoxygenation in Gulf of Maine, but we're seeing those effects cascading through the ecosystem. So changes in fisheries distribution, fisheries production, changes in productivity, and then we're also seeing changes in our social systems as well. Industries that have to go farther or to different places in order to catch seafood. We're seeing some differences in how our communities are responding to that. So it really is precipitating change all the way from physics to people.
You're calling for more research. Lobsters don't know anything about a border at all, do they? But you're asking for trans-border research or some connection or communication there, some sharing of information. Why do you feel that's so important between the United States and Canada?
Yeah, well, the Gulf of Maine ecosystem is one that is a transboundary system, and ecology doesn't necessarily respect or understand sort of man-made boundaries. So we really need a lot of partnership and collaboration between our two countries in order to be able to steward this ecosystem and do the best for it. That's in terms of collaborative research, it's integrated monitoring, it's understanding sort of what the different jurisdictions and regulatory and policy frameworks are in order to be able to do a good job of understanding this ecosystem and helping make it resilient to changes in the future.
Yeah, so practically speaking, what's at risk here? What's at stake here? Well, why is it so important to start doing more of that now?
It's important now because I said this ecosystem is changing disproportionately. We are unfortunately at the leading edge of climate change in this cold water system, and we've seen significant effects in our fisheries already. And unfortunately, this system has not stabilized. It continues to change. So we are a little bit in kind of catch-up mode to make sure that we are staying at the forefront of understanding these changes and being able to make predictions and forecasts about what we think is going to happen so that we can help people who depend on these systems be resilient and adapt for the future.
And some of those people are already seeing some of the changes. We'll hear fishermen say they believe the lobsters are moving a lot, moving to colder waters. You'd verify that? You'd say that that's a reality that we're facing?
Absolutely. We're seeing changes in fish and species distribution, fishes, lobsters, other sea animals. These animals are looking for colder water to some extent, and so they're moving northward, and they're also moving offshore into deeper water. So for fishermen who are fishing these species, they have to go farther from shore. The trips are longer. It's less fuel efficient, more costly, and so we're trying to understand sort of where these species are going so that we can help those who depend on them sort of do a better job of turning that around.
What's catching your eye at this conference?
Oh, a number of things. One of the things that's really exciting is understanding how Canadians are moving toward expanding and making aquaculture more sustainable. So how do we change our fish feed so that we have improved fish growth in aquaculture systems? How do we manage waste from aquaculture systems? Aquaculture is a really great way to diversify an economic portfolio that's based on fisheries, and our partners in Canada are doing a great job of that, so it's really exciting to see some of that science.
Just some of the information, the knowledge being shared here today. Thank you for talking to us about it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Coming up, the Liberals have survived their first major confidence test, passing their budget on a razor margin. And U.S. Congress votes in favor of releasing thousands of documents related to convicted sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein. Prime Minister Mark Carney's minority Liberal government escaped another confidence vote Tuesday. A key Ways and Means motion has passed in the House of Commons. Implementing the budget depends on it. David Thurton has the latest from Ottawa.
Another busy day in Ottawa with a visit from Sweden's monarch.
It is such an honor to welcome you, Your Majesties.
Plus, more budget deliberation.
There are more votes, of course, to come through the budget process.
As Mark Carney suggested there, his minority Liberal government is not out of the woods. The budget passed last night by a razor-thin margin, thanks to a handful of Conservative and NDP MPs abstaining. But more confidence votes are on the way, as the Prime Minister heads on a foreign trip to the United Arab Emirates.
What do you hope to accomplish at the UAE?
Well, I had to change my schedule, actually.
His finance minister was supposed to join him. Instead, he's staying behind to get the budget through the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, what they did yesterday under this leader, they voted against investment in infrastructure. Under this leader, they voted against investment in housing.
Mr. Speaker, I don't think anybody's been able to cram that many slogans into one answer, and this is coming from me.
Conservatives maintain their opposition.
Well, it's not a good budget, so not a good outcome at all for Canada.
What's worse, that budget or an election?
Well, I'll leave each one of you to decide that.
The possibility that the government could fall keeps Liberals on their toes.
I have very good advice for everyone. If you want to be comfortable, don't enter federal politics.
Liberals face votes related to the implementation of their budget, but opposition parties have already signaled they're willing to let enough MPs sit it out to avoid an election. David Thurton, CBC News, Ottawa.
It's been a dramatic day in the U.S. Capitol, where lawmakers have been moving at breakneck speed to pass legislation ordering the full Epstein files to be released. The House of Representatives voted in favor of releasing the files, and just minutes ago, so did the Senate. But the bill still requires a signature from President Donald Trump. Chris Reyes has more.
On this vote, the yeas are 427, the nays are 1.
In a near unanimous vote, Republicans and Democrats overwhelmingly supported a bill to compel the U.S. Justice Department to release all files related to the Jeffrey Epstein case. The convicted sex offender died in jail in 2019, awaiting trial on more charges of sex trafficking and prostitution. Pressure has been mounting on President Donald Trump to make good on his campaign promise to release all files, including more recently from the most loyal members of his party and from his MAGA base. Trump recently called Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene a traitor after she became one of the most vocal supporters of the bill. Greene has since turned on Trump and praised the bipartisan effort to support Epstein's victims.
These men crossed that aisle on behalf of these women. And that is more of what is needed today in America than ever in our history.
Victims of Epstein and their families spoke outside the Capitol before the vote and were in the gallery when the bill passed. One of the speakers, the brother of Virginia Giuffre, who was one of Epstein's most prominent accusers. She died by suicide earlier this year.
A warrior, a mother, and a sister whose legacy will forever resonate in the hearts of those who understand the fight against injustice.
Trump has repeatedly denied any involvement with Jeffrey Epstein, calling the growing attention to release the files a distraction and a Democrat hoax. Still, in a surprise move, he gave the green light for his party to support the bill on Sunday after fighting hard against it.
We have nothing to hide here. I'm voting to release the files so that we can move on from this smear campaign the Democrats have manufactured. God bless.
Gentleman's time has
Trump.
expired.
President Trump says if the bill lands on his desk, he will sign it. Chris Reyes, CBC News, New York.
A powerful atmospheric river drenched much of California over the weekend, leaving at least 6 people dead. The southern part of the state has suffered significant damage from the downpour. In San Diego, a gas station canopy collapsed, and in Palm Springs, vehicles remain trapped in mud. Some Los Angeles communities recently devastated by the wildfires are still at risk of mudslides. And the National Weather Service is warning residents of potential flash floods. Another storm is expected to douse the state on Thursday. Israel's military says one Israeli has been killed and 3 others wounded by an attack by Palestinians in the occupied West Bank. It happened at the site of many past attacks by Palestinian militants and follows a spate of violence by Israeli settlers against Palestinians in the region. Tom Perry has the latest from Jerusalem.
This attack targeting Israelis in the West Bank is just the latest incident of violence there. Israeli police and the military are saying this was a ramming and stabbing attack, so that these attackers, 2 of them, drove a vehicle into pedestrians, and then at least one of them went out and started stabbing victims. Police and the military say that both attackers were killed by security officials on the scene. Again, though, this is just the latest incident of violence in the West Bank. This has been targeting Israelis, but what we've been seeing is Israeli settlers targeting Palestinians in the West Bank. We saw attacks just yesterday near Bethlehem, cars being burned, homes being attacked, Palestinians being attacked, and last week we saw really a mass arson attack by masked settlers going into other villages, attacking homes, attacking factories, burning vehicles, and again, attacking people. Now, this is all coming as the United Nations Security Council has voted to endorse a peace plan for Gaza. That peace plan from Donald Trump. Part 2 of that plan, though, calls for a demilitarization of Gaza, for a board of peace chaired by Trump to oversee a transitional government, and for an international stabilization force to go into Gaza to provide security. Now, we heard the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations after the vote yesterday congratulating the UN on its move.
The United States-sponsored resolution on Gaza that does something we haven't seen in generations. It provides a real, actionable pathway to lasting peace for Palestinians and Israelis.
But there are still questions about how this is all going to unfold. Chief among them, this idea of an international stabilization force. Its role will be to demilitarize Gaza, but to demilitarize Gaza, Hamas is going to have to lay down its weapons, and so far the group has not given any indication it plans to do that. Tom Perry, CBC News, Jerusalem.
A U.S. federal bankruptcy court has formally approved a plan to settle thousands of lawsuits over the harms of opioids. The deal requires members of the Sackler family, who own the company, to contribute up to $7 billion over 15 years. Most of the money will go to government agencies to fight the opioid crisis. Since 1999, 900,000 deaths have been linked to the crisis in the U.S. A portion of the money will also be distributed to some people with opioid addiction and survivors of those who died. Purdue Pharma filed for bankruptcy in 2019 as the opioid lawsuits surged. New data shows progress in this country is stalling when it comes to eliminating cervical cancer. The CBC's Lauren Pelly looks at the concerning trend and what doctors say needs to change.
It's often treatable, even preventable, yet cervical cancer still remains a threat. A new report shows after 2 decades of falling rates, progress has stalled to close to zero.
It's not a surprise.
This physician warns it could jeopardize Canada's commitment to wipe out cervical cancer by 2040. She says doctor shortages and screening backlogs are partly to blame.
We don't have enough family doctors. We need to find new ways to get people screened.
Hundreds of Canadians are expected to die this year alone. The disease is almost always caused by a high-risk form of human papillomavirus, or HPV.
It took so much away from me.
Shannon Pethick hadn't had a screening test in close to a decade when she got diagnosed at the age of 32. She endured chemotherapy and 2 forms of radiation.
It's one of the hardest things I've ever gone through, and I'm grateful that I came out the other side. But I wouldn't wish what I went through on anybody.
The Canadian Cancer Society is now pushing for a switch away from the standard Pap test to one specifically for HPV. That test is less frequent and more accurate. But so far, those screening programs are only being offered in certain parts of the country, while BC is the first province to fully fund HPV self-test kits that people can do at home.
And the final piece of this puzzle is the vaccination.
Advocates want the HPV shot to be free for everyone, since adults who miss the vaccine during school-aged immunization programs often have to pay hundreds out of pocket.
So we're looking for provinces and territories to make the move towards what we call a once eligible, always eligible vaccine policy.
The science is clear. HPV shots work. One study in Scotland found 0 cases of invasive cervical cancer among women vaccinated in their early teens.
Eliminate cervical cancer in Scotland.
Multiple countries are on track to eliminate this disease by 2040, if not sooner. Advocates say if they can do it, so can Canada. Lauren Pelly, CBC News, Toronto.
Some farmers in Ontario are worried they're going to be forced off their land by the federal government. Ottawa needs acreage to build a new radar surveillance system to detect incursions in the far north, and it seems to have set its sights on properties near the town of Stayner. Jamie Strachan reports.
At this farm in central Ontario, it may look like business as usual. But anxiety hovers over the Hutchison family after a letter from the Department of National Defence asked if they would consider selling their near 100-acre property.
My family has been here since 1879 on this property, and I'm the 5th generation to take over, and my son is hopefully going to be the 6th generation.
He asked me, Mom, what are we going to do?
Farmer Rachel Brooks was also approached over the summer.
I remember opening the letter and thinking, is this a joke? What's going on here?
Clearview Township, about 2 hours north of Toronto, has some of the best agricultural land in the province. It's here D&D wants to build a massive radar site covering around 4,000 acres, part of Canada's $38 billion air defense modernization.
It immediately impacted my sense of security, my security in the sense of something that I own could possibly be taken from me.
The government has already purchased a 700-acre parcel in the area, but needs a lot more to make the project viable. Residents and the local MP have been unable to get answers about what will happen if landowners choose not to sell.
That's part of the concern with the residents up there. Will they or will they not expropriate?
In a statement to CBC News, D&D said it's not currently working on expropriation, but doesn't say anything about the future.
As farmers, we work for a future. We plan for a future. And it just felt like it was going to be gone. So what are we working so hard for?
Just one more question with no clear answer. Jamie Strachan, CBC News, near Stayner, Ontario.
As you saw earlier, the Queen and King of Sweden have arrived in Canada for a 3-day state visit. King Carl Gustaf and Queen Sylvia were welcomed at the Governor General's residence and later laid a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier. They also stopped by Parliament Hill, where they signed a guest book and met with the Prime Minister and other government officials. The royals are traveling with a delegation of Swedish ministers and business leaders from dozens of Swedish companies on this visit. Canada's main stock index swung between gains and losses on Tuesday, finishing in negative territory, while U.S. markets also fell. Let's look at the numbers then as we head to break.
This weather update is brought to you in part by Atlantic Lottery's iGames. Play hundreds of games on the Atlantic Lottery app or at alc.ca.
All right, it's picture time here on the show. Let's see where Ryan's taking us tonight.
Yeah, and you know what? I have noticed, still love everybody contributing, but we're kind of past the peak of the leaves.
Okay.
Before the snow flies. This is kind of the
dry stretch?
The dry stretch of the viewer pictures. Not getting 20 a night, I'll put it that way.
Right, okay.
Coming into the inbox. So, but a beautiful one. We're always looking for the moments. Have a look at this one. We're going to zoom in on Seaforth, and beautiful spot as always, and a nice rainbow there. So this time of year, you got to look a little closer for those special moments, right?
Pretty darn nice one right there, that's for sure.
And a big thanks to Steve for this. Ryan's picks at cbc.ca. And as we look at the outlook here, so a chance for some of those showers and flurries continuing over the next hour or so. A couple of hours, I should say, and then really done by late evening across the mainland. Cape Breton, Inverness County in particular, we're looking at those showers and flurries continuing into the early overnight, and even, in fact, Wednesday morning for northern Inverness, where by the time we get to lunchtime tomorrow, it looks like it's wrapped up there. We're looking at those generally a mix of sun and cloud for Wednesday afternoon across the province, becoming even mainly sunny towards the end of the day before the sun sets, and that will kind of set the table for a bright Thursday as well. 4, 5, and 6 degrees. Note the winds still from the west tomorrow, 20 gusting 30 to 40. So again, it will be a little on the breezy side. It's pretty much continuing where it has been for the last couple of days. And then for Thursday, we're looking at light winds, lots of sunshine, mostly sunny skies, and temperatures, again, 4, 5, and 6 degrees. We should be around 6 or 7 for this time of year. And it's all thanks to that area of high pressure, which will bring us the nice sunshine and the lighter winds. And then we've got that system coming in from the west and another one from the south. And so we're going to get hit by both of those through the later stages of Friday. Friday night will be the wettest period into Saturday morning. Clearing skies through Saturday. Sunday looks to be a pretty nice one.
Yeah, that sounds all right to me. Okay, thanks so much for that, Ryan. Well, it's being called a breakthrough in animal evolution. A new video reveals how far wolves will go to steal a meal. This is a look at a wolf off the BC coast doing something that's never been caught on video before, as far as we know. It's using a tool. Researchers say wolves have learned to swim out, dive down, and pull crab traps onto the beach by the rope.
The wolves are after the fish inside that orange cup that's used as bait. The discovery is being called a breakthrough in understanding animal intelligence.
Seems smart enough, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That's it for us tonight. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Good night.